The Great Purge, also known as the Great Terror, was a period of intense political repression in the Soviet Union, led by Joseph Stalin between 1936 and 1938. During this time, Stalin sought to eliminate any perceived threats to his power. This wasn't just about opposition parties or foreign spies. It was about anyone who might challenge his control over the Soviet Union, including people within his own government, military, and even regular citizens. The result was widespread arrests, torture, show trials, and executions. Millions of people, including intellectuals, military leaders, and everyday citizens, were accused of being enemies of the people. The scale of the purge was staggering, and the number of lives it affected still haunts Russia today. The aim was to create a completely loyal and unified society under Stalin's rule. Stalin's paranoia played a huge role in the outbreak of the Great Purge. While his rise to power in the 1920s involved political maneuvering and the elimination of his rivals within the Communist Party, it wasn't until the mid-1930s that Stalin became truly suspicious of anyone around him. He feared that even his closest allies and former comrades might betray him or challenge his absolute power. Stalin's obsession with control intensified after the assassination of Sergei Kirov, a popular communist leader, in December 1934. The murder of Kirov became a turning point for Stalin, who saw it as a sign that enemies within the party were plotting against him. This event gave him the pretext to launch a full-scale purge, claiming that it was necessary to root out counter-revolutionaries and traitors. In reality, Stalin used the event as an excuse to eliminate anyone who might pose a threat. The NKVD, the Soviet Union's secret police force, played a central role in carrying out the Great Purge. They were responsible for arresting, interrogating, and executing those accused of treason or espionage. Led by Nikolai Yezhov, the NKVD operated with brutal efficiency and fear. People were arrested without evidence, often based on accusations from neighbors or even family members. Once arrested, victims were often tortured into confessing to crimes they didn't commit. The NKVD used show trials to create an illusion of justice. High-profile individuals, including former Bolshevik leaders, were paraded in front of the public, forced to confess to fabricated crimes, and then executed or sent to labor camps. These trials, designed to showcase Stalin's power, were also a tool to create a climate of fear in the Soviet Union. Anyone could be arrested for the smallest suspicion, making it nearly impossible to trust anyone, even close friends or family. The Great Purge had a devastating impact on Soviet society. Millions of people were either executed, imprisoned, or sent to labor camps in Siberia. The purge affected every level of society: government officials, military officers, intellectuals, and even ordinary citizens. The Soviet Union became a place of fear and distrust where no one felt safe. It wasn't just those who were arrested who suffered. The fear of being denounced by others caused many to live in constant anxiety. People were afraid to speak their minds, to question authority, or even to trust their closest friends. The purges also decimated the Soviet military. Many experienced generals were either executed or imprisoned, weakening the Soviet Union's ability to defend itself in the years leading up to World War II. In a society where paranoia ruled, the Great Purge left deep psychological scars. The fear of speaking out and the constant threat of arrest stayed with Soviet citizens for many years. By 1938, the Great Purge began to wind down, largely because Stalin had eliminated nearly all of his perceived enemies within the Communist Party and the military. However, the damage had been done. Stalin's reign of terror left a legacy of broken families, ruined careers, and a generation of traumatized people. The scale of the violence was immense, and its long-term effects on the Soviet Union were profound. After the purge ended, Stalin continued to hold absolute power, but the Soviet Union was a shell of what it could have been. The loss of so many skilled professionals, military leaders and intellectuals set the country back. Stalin's distrust of others had weakened the Soviet Union's internal structures, making it more vulnerable to external threats in the future. Additionally, the people who survived the Great Purge were left to rebuild their lives in a society that had been reshaped by fear and oppression. Many of the purged individuals' families were also affected, as the stigma of being associated with a traitor lasted for generations. The legacy of the Great Purge continues to haunt Russia and the world. It was a period of intense repression that showed the extent of Stalin's control and the lengths he was willing to go to maintain power. The purges destroyed lives, families, and the very fabric of Soviet society. Many of the victims of the purge were never exonerated, and their families continued to suffer long after Stalin's death in 1953. In the decades that followed, the Soviet government kept the purges hidden or downplayed, creating a historical void that many people did not fully understand until the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. Today, the Great Purge serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of absolute power and the devastating consequences of political oppression. The Great Purge is not just a Soviet tragedy, it's a universal lesson in the dangers of dictatorship and the importance of human rights, freedom of speech, and accountability in governance. It is a history that should never be forgotten, so that we can prevent such atrocities from happening again. The Great Purge was one of the darkest chapters in Soviet history, marking a period where millions of lives were destroyed under the weight of Stalin's paranoia and desire for absolute control. Through mass arrests, executions, and forced confessions, Stalin's terror reshaped the Soviet Union and left scars that lasted for decades. Understanding this history is crucial, as it serves as a warning of what can happen when power goes unchecked. By learning from the past, we can strive for a future where such tragedies never repeat. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. See you in the next chapter of history.